for those of you who aren't familiar with us, my name is Andrew Wall. I'm the managing partner at CPA4IT. We are a top 50 cloud accounting firm and an elite QuickBooks Pro advisor. We've been specializing in service-based businesses since 1984 when my father, George Wall, founded the firm. And we are one of the very few ISO 9001 registered firms. And for those of you not familiar with ISO, that means we just have systems, processes, and procedures that are externally audited and reviewed to make sure that we're constantly striving for constant and never-ending improvement. So I'm moving through this obviously relatively quickly so we can jump in and make up for the lost time that I've lost with all my technical issues. So today we're going to be talking to you guys about cybersecurity. On the agenda today, we're going to be looking at cybersecurity awareness, looking at specifically social engineering, phishing, and data breaches. We'll talk to you a little bit about a security app stack to help protect your information, and then we'll open it up for Q&A and provide you some additional information for those of you who are looking to dive a little bit deeper on cybersecurity awareness. And if I can get my slides to respond, we will go to the next slide, which talks about cybersecurity awareness. There we go. Now this data is a little bit out of date, but in our sort of venture into the cloud era, we know that cybersecurity does emerge as really a pivotal frontier. And the recent surge of cybercrime has really been escalating. And there are stats that say it's growing by over 600%, and it's gotten even worse ever since the COVID-19 pandemic. And, these are huge cybersecurity threats that are growing almost on a daily basis. Some of the noteworthy incidents include major people like Facebook, Bombardier, and these cybersecurity threats really sort of underscore the evolving and insidious nature of these cyber threats. But it's important to know it's not just the big firms that have to be worried about this. It's the small businesses who constitute the bedrock of our economy, and they find themselves really vulnerable, with shockingly 43% of cyber attacks targeting these small businesses. And the majority, over 70% of them, are really unprepared for the digital onslaughts, and only about 51% allocate any sort of budget towards cybersecurity. And that is, I would guess, not even the majority of our clients, who are probably not budgeting anything towards cybersecurity. And this gap is, thriving and creating an opportunity for these cyber criminals. And so as cyber adversaries, we want to sort of dismantle this opportunity and the sort of the sinister evolution that's going on with cybercrime, and which lately has come down to triple extortion ransomware, which does three things, right? It has ransomware that attacks the organization and their customers, as well as their partners, in sort of this sort of whole cyber extortion web. And what our goal here today is to enlighten and sort of galvanize a proactive stance towards protecting your digital domains. So we're going to delve into sort of various facets of cyber threats, and keeping in mind that awareness is really your foremost ally in navigating this cyber landscape, because there's not a lot of things that you can do to completely eliminate the threat, but being aware of what's going on in cybercrime and setting up some policies and processes can really go a long way in protecting yourself. And I would say, we're going to be talking today a little bit about phishing and data breaches and social engineering. But one of the big things that's on the rise that unfortunately isn't in this slide deck is something called vishing, which is sort of like phishing, which some of you might be familiar with, but is more about voice phishing. And I'll try to weave some of that into this presentation today, but really I want to talk first about social engineering. Because, in social engineering, we sort of unveil the human facade of cyber threats. And it's astounding and alarming, but 98% of cyber attacks hinge on social engineering tactics. And this stat isn't just a number, but really a revelation of the human vulnerability in this sort of digital warfare that we're in. So within the past year, nearly half, or about 43% of IT professionals reported being targeted by social engineering schemes. And the level of ingenuity and deceptiveness that's taking place in these social engineering is really quite sophisticated and tech savvy. And even the most tech savvy of us are not really immune to this. So the vulnerability spectrum does obviously vary, with new employees being the highest risk, with a significant of over 60% of IT professionals identifying recent hires as obviously the most susceptible to social engineering attacks. And this really just calls for making sure that we're spending time on awareness and vigilance from sort of day one. Of course, there is still the sort of insider threat. And there's some interesting stats that, 21% of current or former employees resort to sort of social engineering for various motives, be it, financial gain, revenge, curiosity, or just sort of as a joke. But this internal threat dimension adds sort of a whole nother layer of complexity to the cyber landscaping. So we have to understand that social engineering is not just a technical challenge, but really is a human one. And it implores us to cultivate a robust cyber hygiene culture that transcends the whole technical and digital realm and focuses more on the psyche and the way we interact with our team. And if I were to give you one overriding tip that relates to, all the different types of attacks there can be, is come up with a safe word. And then this is a safe word for your business and a safe word for your family. And this can go a long way against a lot of these social engineering attacks. But there are some other strategies that we can take. So when it comes to the realm of social engineering, prevention is really like the human firewall. And some of the pivotal tests obviously include educating yourself. So arming yourself with the knowledge about what the common social engineering tactics are, how that it's evolved from emails where they've spoofed an email address to pretend to be someone, to now spoofing phone numbers to pretend to be someone and calling, and coming up with a lot of, quite frankly, private information about you that they've been able to gather from whether it be data breaches or other sources of information. So you've got to be aware, and you've got to educate yourself on how these phishing and now vishing attacks are evolving, and be aware of what information you're releasing. So you want to exercise vigilance about all of your financial information, both online and off, because they can both be used as a piece of the data puzzle that could be used as a malicious scheme to gather more information from you and gather the financial information that they're looking to access to result in things like identity theft. And some common things that people might be aware of are, things on Facebook where it seem like quizzes or common posts that are actually social engineering strategies to try and get out of you things that might be passwords or things that they would know about you to provide greater insight in these vishing and phishing campaigns. You also want to identify your valuable assets. And when we're talking about this, we're not talking necessarily your financial assets, but your digital assets as well. And by knowing what's at stake, you really heighten and protect your guard around these informational treasures. Of course, we talk a lot about the human aspect of cybersecurity prevention, but it is important to also make sure that we're keeping software up to date, because that is also another vulnerability, is that they can still take advantage of physical systems if you're not patching and updating your environment. And of course, if you are ever approached by someone, you want to really take a minute to pause and assess and inquire whether the person who's requesting your information truly warrants access to the data that they're looking to get. So discretion is really your biggest shield against deceit. So the more that you can be proactive in challenging whether you should provide that information or not, or looking for alternative ways to provide it. If your bank is calling you and saying that your card has been compromised and they're requesting a bunch of information, you hang up and you call the number on the back of your card to make sure that you're actually dealing with your bank. Of course, you do also want to watch for inconsistencies in the queries and be alert to questions that sort of veer off the expected path and don't align with the sort of pretext of the original call. And these anomalies are really sort of the red flags that you want to be looking for in signaling a sort of social engineering attempt. And preventing social engineering like I said, is a dynamic and constantly changing aspect. And this results back to, again, the number one tip I can give you, which is to come up with a safe word that, if someone is requesting information or asking you to take action to provide financial information or to provide gift cards or whatever the case might be, that they're who they say they are. And in this digital world of AI, where a voice can be cloned with only 3 seconds of recording, a face can be cloned, deep fake technology is now available to the masses in off-the-shelf AI technology that anyone can download. And if you're not familiar with this, go check out HeyGen, which is a plugin that works with ChatGPT and that can generate a voice clone and generate a avatar clone of anyone. So it's amazing what these technologies can do. And ostensibly with HeyGen, you have to approve it and get verified, but you can imagine nefarious actors using these types of technology to be able to do that is really updating their capabilities of their attacks. And in the world of cyber attacks, still the most prevalent is going to be phishing or now vishing attacks. And this is where they're sort of luring in luring you into this sort of unsuspecting trap that has been very, very meticulously crafted. And the stats are eye-opening, with 30% of phishing messages hitting their mark and actually enticing recipients to unveil their confidential information. And among these, 12% really fall prey to actually clicking on malicious attachments and links. So stepping up the snare and pulling them tighter into the realm of this cybersecurity trap. Now, when it comes to vishing attempts or phishing attempts, particularly, some of the most common things are office documents, which tops the list at 38%, which might seem benign office documents, but they serve as sort of like the vessel for the malicious intent. Hey, look at this invoice. Hey, which one we've seen recently is like, here are your employee benefits package. And they do quite a good job of spoofing these official documents to making them look legit. Archives are close to office documents, with 30% of archive documents which sort of act as masks for this nefarious payload. PDFs are another one, which can look legitimate. They account for about 14% of malicious attachments. And then other extensions making up about 6%, binaries only about 4%, and XML, HTML, and JavaScript about 1% of the types of documents that are most likely to contain a malicious link. And so one of the other things is important is to make sure that you're hovering over the link before you're clicking on it, to make sure it's going to the right place. Of course, if you're on your phone, you can long hold that link to see where it's going to go before you actually click on it. And there's other steps that we can take as well. So when we want to fortify against phishing attacks, we want to make sure we're guarding personal information. So we're not providing any personal identifiable information, especially in any unsolicited communications that we receive either by email or voice. We want to authenticate email addresses and ensure that the email addresses that you engage with are actually authentic and are not spoofs, especially when you're dealing with sensitive information. Of course, you want to steer clear of any unknown links and attachments, and take that extra step to hover over and make sure that you're clicking on links that are actually from the person that they say they are. And be aware of any sort of sense of false urgency. So anyone who's trying to create some sort of urgency, That's a big red flag that you want to be on the lookout for. Another big thing that you can check for are spelling and grammatical mistakes. There's more and more of these cyber criminals are leveraging, again, more AI technology, which is less likely to have typos, but many of these attacks are stemming from non-English speaking countries, or at least not English as your first language. So there are often typos and mistakes and grammatical errors that can be red flags as sort of identifying them as potential cybersecurity threats. Of course, you do want to make sure that you've got additional authentication policies, including multi-factor authentication, phone calls to authorize any payments, especially if you're wiring money or sending gift cards. And with that, along with that phone call authorization, is that safe word that we talked about. And any additional steps that you can add to sort of create a robust barrier against these fraudulent transactions. So next, we want to sort of dive into our data breaches. If I can get there. There we go. So when we look at data breaches, it sort of looks at the silent storm that's brewing within the digital boundaries of various organizations. And what's startling about this is that it takes organizations an average of 191 days to identify a data breach. And this latency doesn't only delay, but it makes this vulnerability even more dangerous. So let's look at some of the major root causes of data breaches. So negligent employee or contractor. So someone could unintentionally, through oversights of their own or their employees or some contractors, open the gates to these data breaches. Maybe sharing information in an email, responding to a phishing attack, providing information that provides access, or clicking on a mistake. Next is third-party mistakes. So mistakes by third-party entities, like so if we're using another piece of technology like QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks gets hacked, that's another layer that we have to look at and make sure that we're safeguarding that and putting in policies and rules to make sure that only people who require access to documents have access to them. Of course, there's the general system or operating process errors. If you haven't patched and made sure your software is up to date, cyber criminals can take advantage of the glitches in the systems as sort of a chink in the armor and exploit that. There are still unknown causes that remain sort of elusive, and we don't really know how they're getting in, and that's still a surprising high percentage of the cyber attacks that take place. Of course, there are external hacks, where the cyber attacker is just, doing everything they can to physically crack the infrastructure. But those are really the lowest level of attacks that take place. Really, the majority come from these negligent employees or contractors who are most likely clicking on a phishing attack, which exposes their system, installs software that enables people to monitor their systems and get access to legitimate passwords that grant them access into your systems and expose all of that personal and confidential information. But there are things that you can do to protect against this. So again, educate and train. So, make sure that you're equipping the employees and contractors with the knowledge and training to avoid making these mistakes and recognizing these threats and responding effectively. You also want to make sure that you're vetting third parties thoroughly and make sure that they adhere to their own sort of robust cybersecurity practices to minimize the risk of them leading to a data breach. You also want to make sure that you have a system and process audit. So you want to have a regular look at your systems and their operational processes to identify and rectify potential vulnerabilities. And of course, make sure you're doing things like patching and making sure that your software is up to date, that your browser is up to date. And you want to make sure that you have some form of incident detection capabilities. So there's a number of ways that you can do that. We use an EDR tool that helps with that. There are various different pieces of technology that you can use to sort of enhance the incident identification capabilities and shorten that 191 average day timeline to enable you to do quicker responses and to mitigate the damage. So you want to make sure you've got sort of robust firewalls and encryption and anti-malware and multi-factor authentication and all the different pieces of technology to prevent the physical attacks that could take place. And of course, you want to monitor the actual insider activities. So you, again, like I said earlier, make sure that you're limiting access to people only having access to the information they actually need, as opposed to blanket access. And then you want to go back and monitor and access and see if people are going into places that they shouldn't have access to. And then most importantly is the sort of continuous improvement and learning from your past incidents and learning from industry best practices and learning from the emerging threats to continually improve your sort of security posture. And some of the app stacks that we probably want to mention to you guys as tools that everyone can incorporate into their sort of quiver of cybersecurity tools is LastPass as a password storage tool to make sure that you're using complex passwords and then they're not stored in your web browser, which can be very dangerous. Duo is a multi-factor authentication tool. It is critical to have multi-factor authentication. It's one of the #1 tools that can really minimize your cyber vulnerability. And this just basically ensures that the person logging into the site is actually you by using a second form of authentication. You might have seen this with banks who might rely on your cell phone or the CRA. There's a number of ways that multi-factor authentication works. We recommend an authenticator-based app, such as Duo or one of the others. Microsoft and Google also both make their own authenticator apps. We're big fans of Duo, and that's one that you might want to look at. You should also be actually monitoring your credit. There's a couple of free tools out there to monitor your credit here in Canada. We've got Borrowwell and Credit Karma. You do want to use both of these. And this is because it's a great tool to be able to monitor both credit unions. So Borrowwell does one and Credit Karma does the other. I can't remember which is which. But these are great tools that you can install and make sure that you're monitoring your credit to identify if there are potentially any accesses to your credit or your identity that might be at risk. Another tool that I do recommend is Rewind Backups. And Rewind Backups is a tool primarily around QuickBooks Online, but can be used with a number of other tools like Shopify and stuff like that to make sure if anything were ever compromised in any of all these online tools that we're using on a day-to-day basis, that you have an ability to sort of rewind and go back to that. It's sort of like having a data backup for all of the SaaS information that's stored online in this day and age. So those are just a couple of the tools that you can use to sort of arm yourself with the tools that you need to protect against cybersecurity in this sort of cloud era. There's some other information that you guys can access, great things, which is like the cybersecurity fact sheet from the FTC in the US, but it's actually a great cybersecurity fact sheet for small businesses. The US Chamber of Commerce also has one. These are also linked here. And that's sort of the Internet Security Essentials for Businesses. And then there's the cybersecurity checklist that you can use that we've developed ourselves that's available on our website. So these are all great tools. And if anyone needs access, we are happy to provide links to these, which are in this slide deck for anyone who wants a copy of the slide deck. And with that, I do want to open it up. I want to apologize for the technical hurdles that I struggled with this morning and sort of take this opportunity to open up to Q&A and see if anyone has any questions about cybersecurity in this digital era and things that they can do to help protect and protect their confidential financial information, and prevent cyber attacks. And again, I do want to encourage everyone to first use the Q&A. And if there's anyone live on Facebook, feel free to post your question there, and that'll get relayed over. And if you do have a working mic and do want to ask a question, feel free to use the raise your hand feature. And if there's nothing, I will give you guys back some more of your time. And thank you for dealing with my technical struggles as we did eventually get them. Although I didn't get my mic working. Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm just going to call it a day there, and wish you a happy Tuesday. Have a great day. Bye for now.